Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody again to October's movie night and virtual discussion. You'll notice that Eric is unfortunately not here and he's unable to join us. My name is Molly Snow and I'll be taking over and leading the discussion tonight. I just want to first shout out to the museum's foundation for their continued support, especially their executive director, Jen Carlson. And then also to our sponsor, Generac Power Systems, for making all these virtual events possible. So tonight's movie is Mr. Roberts from 1955, starring Henry Fonda and James Cagney, William Powell, and Jack Lemmon. To get started, what did everyone think of the movie?
Well, I'll give it a start. It was listed as a comedy drama, and as we watched it, I think it kind of leaned pretty heavily toward the comedy side. It was some of the caricatures were kind of silly, the way they portrayed sailors. Like every sailor goes out and gets so completely drunk he doesn't know what he's doing. So that was a pretty silly side. So, and I kind of liked it as a comedy.
It wasn't at all what I expected it would be, and I was taken aback by the ending. After enjoying all that comedy, I'm like, no, don't Henry Blake him.
Right.
But I really enjoyed it. It made me remember how much I enjoy Henry Fonda's work, and I was well entertained throughout.
I enjoyed it, although I'm not sure I enjoyed it as much as some other people have enjoyed it. Jimmy Cagney, I kept expecting him to go, "You dirty rat," in his old gangster movies. It almost struck me as a one-dimensional kind of character, in a way that the others weren't. But in general, I liked it. As for the ending, I don't know, maybe it's because we saw the MASH version of that, that it didn't really catch me off guard. I'll just note that when I was in high school, and this was obviously a long time ago, the drama teacher at my high school put on Mr. Roberts as a stage play, and I actually had a role in it, although I'd totally forgotten the whole plot. My role was the offstage voice, the doing all the calls for the over the PA system for the ship.
Oh, cool.
They're very cool.
Has anyone seen the version of the Broadway play?
No, I wasn't aware that there was a Broadway play. I did read something about it after this, that we were going to watch it. I had no idea. It's not that I was too young to remember that, but but I didn't know that. So that was pretty impressive. So, but the same actors did not play the same characters, right? In the play and the movie? Is that, or did they?
William Powell, I think, was in the stage play, but none of the others were.
Okay.
Speaking of the plays, I think that was one thing that kind of caught me about the movie. It seemed like they were trying to make it part play, part movie, because some of the caricatures of the characters there. I'm thinking of the one scene in particular where the soldiers are all looking at the sailors are all looking at the hospital through their binoculars, and that whole scene just seemed to be staged in a way that it was designed for the stage rather than for the movies.
Yeah.
I liked it. At first I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it, but as I watched through it, I think, as Chris said, it wasn't like a wow factor to me, but I liked the movie. I liked the characters. I liked the kind of the negative guy and the, you know, the good guy. And I like Henry Fonda, so.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. We'll get started, I guess, with the first question. So when we first meet Mr. Roberts, he is on watch duty and spies something of significant interest to him. What does he see and why is that important to him?
Well, he sees the entire naval battle group sailing out to go engage the enemy. I'm sure it was significant to him because he saw his war sliding away, something that he wanted to participate in, and he couldn't or wasn't going to.
Oh.
Yeah, I agree with John. He saw the task force and he saw it just pass him by and everything was passing by and he just seems stuck there in the boredom of and monotony of what they had to do.
Right. Yeah. And I thought it was kind of interesting at the beginning. He really wants to get more adventure in his life. And at the end, it ties in with his letter and he's saying the unseen enemy is boredom, which I think is what he felt throughout, right?
I thought it was kind of interesting that what he sees is the task force in silhouette. Doesn't see any details. And it kind of, to me, kind of symbolized his lack, in a sense, his lack of understanding about what the details of war actually meant, as much as he wanted to be there.
I was kind of surprised that at his age and that point in his life, he was so eager to get into combat and not be bored, where I think a lot of people might have more life experience and think, you know, I'm glad to not have action right now. Maybe I'll get through this thing alive.
That's one thing. Maybe Chris or somebody else can say, but Lieutenant JG is not supposed to be very old. So I kind of thought that some of these actors were older cast than what they should have been, because an ensign is just out of college, first in, and then like right now, I don't know if back then, but right now it's like maybe a couple years, I think 2 years before you put on Lieutenant JG, junior grade. He was just a junior grade lieutenant. He wasn't even a full lieutenant. So he actually should have been pretty young.
Yeah, that's interesting. Go ahead.
I had read something when I looked up the movie and a little synopsis of it, that Mr. Roberts here had quit medical school to join the service and serve his country. I mean, he seemed very motivated and a sense of duty, and so I think that is what motivated him. He wanted to do something and make it meaningful. So
I think the doc said something in one of their conversations. He said something like, "You quit medical school," so that was brought up in the movie.
Yeah. So
possibly he came in late, like through OCS, Officer Candidate School or something.
Right.
And the whole thing about that ship, it was a ship that wasn't in direct action. In one of the captain's rants, he commented about being in the Merchant Marine, and complaining about Roberts being the college boy. So it looks like they had a ship that was going to be a supply ship, and they needed somebody that was familiar with that type of sea duty, and got the captain out of the Merchant Marine, and it was kind of a ragtag crew, maybe. That could have been an explanation for old guy, low rank. There's only two explanations for that. Somebody goes in late, or he had a big rank and he did something wrong, and now he has a lower rank. But I don't think that was the case.
I think Lisa's point is good, though, in the sense that maybe Henry Fonda was a little too old, even if you come in on an older age. As well as he performed, I think Lisa's point is well taken, that he just seemed a little older than you would expect for somebody with his rank, even allowing for the late entry.
Yeah, and I think I read somewhere he was about 50, and so they made the other actors appear older so that he could look younger, like you said. Yeah, interesting. So the next question we'll go on to is, what's his relationship with the captain and the fellow officers and the crew? What's that like?
This isn't an answer to the question, but it's kind of maybe somebody. Why is he called Mr. Roberts? Why didn't they call him LT or Lieutenant? Or does anybody know that?
I saw it as a sign of respect, that they looked up to him at a higher level than his actual rank indicated, but I don't really know.
I'm not real familiar with naval rankings. I know that in a JG is, I believe, similar to a Army first lieutenant, and ensign is a second lieutenant, similar. And I just thought, it's one of those military slangs. I don't think it has a rank designation. But once again, I don't know that much about the naval terminologies.
The only thing that I could think of was that the captain used it in a snarky way, Mr. So maybe the crew took it on in an affectionate way to kind of balance that out. Sorry, Molly.
You're fine. That's a valid question. I didn't think about that.
Can you say your question again? I apologize.
Oh yeah, no problem. Just what is the relationship between Mr. Roberts, I keep doing that, and the captain and the crew?
Well, there certainly seemed to be tension between Mr. Roberts and the captain, but the crew seemed to love him. I mean, that was the sense I got, and of course later felt betrayed when he starts hammering down on them, not understanding why he was doing that. And he seemed to have the respect of his fellow officers. His relationship with Pulver was kind of weird, but in general, I mean, he's obviously the center of the whole story. So you can't have him being the bad guy throughout the whole thing.
I think that he was, he was steady. He always seems to be. In fact, the movies I've seen, he always seems to be a steady character. Henry Fonda, but I didn't like how the crew turned on him so quickly. I mean, they should have known. They had learned, they learned to admire him. That takes time, but then to lose that admiration just so quickly was a little disheartening. But I use this word because I have a lot of in my environment, so I've used it on other discussions that we've had. But the captain was definitely narcissistic, and there was really nothing that you could explain to him or reason with him or anything. He just was all about himself, and he was going to treat other people however he needed to get what he wanted, what he thought he wanted, but he wasn't actually getting anywhere with his crew. But he used it as authoritarian like.
He was a bully. I mean, he just, that's how he ruled the ship was. He was just a bully. And I think the old inferiority complex, he just felt threatened by anyone who was smarter. Right. And he just couldn't handle that. So he just bullied people to get his way. And Mr. Roberts took what he did or fought back for his crew. I mean, you had to admire him for that. I mean, he just, because the captain's domineering thing, no movies, and it just to prove his point, he just was not a likable person.
Very career driven, right? So
Right.
wanting that promotion, I'm gonna do anything to get that.
Right.
I think his rank in the service, his rank as captain, aggravated and encouraged him to parlay those characteristics into this domineering aspect of running the ship.
John, or Chris, or let's see, Sally, maybe you can say that movie that we saw with Kirk Douglas, when the guy, all he wanted was his promotion and moving up. So
As of Glory.
yes, so we have a similar, not near to that level, but very similar.
Right. He was power hungry. Think Henry Fonda was old to be a lieutenant. Cagney was really old to be a captain. He wanted to be something higher, a commander, or whatever the next rank is. One of these days I'm going to learn that. I have no desire, but one of these days I'll.
Well, if his rank was captain, the next step would have been admiral.
Admiral, okay. But that's one of the quirks of the naval terminology. He could be a lieutenant by rank and still be the captain of the ship, and they would address him as captain. Just like an admiral could be the captain of a ship, and I don't know if they'd address him as a captain, but because he's an admiral. But whoever's in charge of the ship is the captain of the ship.
I just had the sense that was his rank as well, but maybe it wasn't.
He only had two. He had the bars of a captain, an army captain. Railroad tracks, two bars.
So John, you're saying that it can be the rank and the title?
Yeah, that's where I got confused with the Mr. Roberts thing. It's not a rank, but it's a kind of a title. The one of the first things I do and it drives her nuts is when I see movies like this, I always look for rank. And Cagney was a 2-bar, like equal to a captain in the army. But he was the captain of that ship. Anyway, and when you get into the admiral ranks in the Navy, got rear admirals, all, I have no idea what those. It all has to do with the number of stars. But anyway,
Chris, once you get these traditional ranks down, then you can work on the Space Force.
Yeah. Well, I'm an Army guy, and I always thought the Air Force had their chevrons upside down. So, it does for great conversation. My brother-in-law was in the Air Force, so we talk about it all the time.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Starfleet uses naval ranking, and I never recognized it as naval ranking before. Huh.
Well, if Cagney had the two bars, that would be the equivalent. The rank would, I think, be a lieutenant in the Navy.
Yes, I think so.
And then what does that make Mr. Roberts?
Well, Army first and second lieutenant is a JG and then an ensign.
Ensign and Lieutenant JG, and then you get to lieutenant with two bars.
And lieutenant commander.
I wasn't clear what I guess I must be misremembering what Mr. Roberts' rank was.
JG. It said on his locker, JG. So he was like a second lieutenant. And then after
Lieutenant.
first lieutenant, yes, first lieutenant. Then after full commander is like a bird colonel or something like that. Major is a better. We've wasted too much time on ranking, especially with the Navy.
Okay. Just one other relationship I think we kind of missed out on was the role of Doc and how he interacted with different characters. Does anyone have anything to say about that?
I think
Could you repeat the question?
Just we haven't talked about Doc and his relationship with the characters as well.
I think Doc was kind of the wise mediator. He always was just kind of there to mediate and bridge between the situations. Very wise. Older too.
He was kind of the father confessor to some, and sounding board for Roberts, and wise old sage to Pulver.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. He was laying down the bed in the one scene, and Pulver's like, "I followed Roberts everywhere, and he would not listen to me." And the Doc's like, "Yep, okay, just listening." And okay. So the next question is, describe the role of the USS Reluctant in the war effort. So how is this role important, and how does the crew see itself with regard to their overall contribution to the war?
Well, I said before, it's a supply ship, and just getting out closer to the actual ships in battle and supplying, but never getting into the battle. I don't know exactly how I don't think the crew cared. They were just probably fed up by being on the ship that long without getting some leave and being able to break free.
Well, I'm thinking that it's kind of like the cleaning crew at work. Nobody notices them till they're not there. When everything's a mess. Oh, where's the cleaning crew? They didn't show up last night. Well, they're very vital, but they don't get the credit due.
I think they were kind of cynical about their role too, or at least about
Right.
what's happening on the ship, because there's particularly the way they refer to the potted palm as for delivering more toilet paper or something than any other ship in the Navy.
And then John mentioned leave, or so their liberty. So why is liberty for the crew so important? And what does Mr. Roberts have to do to make sure that happened?
Well, the liberty, in such a confined space, they just need to feel human. And so they need to get out and stretch and do all their wily behaviors. And he made a deal with the devil. So, and for a while it cost them.
I can't imagine being with the same group of people for so long, with no one else to talk to. Ugh. Even if you really like them.
Or not. I mean, it wasn't by choice. So that's
Right, that confining too, with some fights broke out out and stuff like that. I think just from the
Yep.
boredom and
The
the monotony
monotony,
and not seeing action. I mean, that all plays, I think, a part in needing to get off the boat and do their thing, Yeah. So
I thought the scene where Henry Fonda cuts his deal was one of the best scenes in the movie, because it sort of brought together all of the tensions and all of the you really got an idea about the character of everybody on that ship as a result of that scene and what immediately follows with the crew feeling it had been betrayed and how they reacted to it.
Did you see the captain's lip curl when he turned around? When Mr. Roberts turned around to like work with him on the deal, and the captain's just got this huge smirk and his lip curled just like the Grinch, and what is it? Stole Christmas? Yeah.
Oh yeah, his eyes lit up for that one to get his way, right? I thought another funny scene kind of about that was one of the crew guys said, first real good day was when those nurses showed up. And they just got to see new, fresh faces. So why do you think that Captain Morton withheld the Liberty from the crew?
I think he had to assert his power
I was gonna say that, just a power trip.
and let them know that he was in control.
I agree.
it kind of turned out that he was right, because what happened, they had liberty and they get kicked out of port because of their behavior. The captain is livid.
Boys will be boys.
Boys.
It's also possible that the reason that happened was because they hadn't been given liberty before.
This is yeah.
Or they were worried they won't have it again.
Right. This is the last time.
Get as much in as we can.
I don't think he knew. I don't think he has any other skills. I don't think he knows how to
lead.
garner respect. So he uses the tools that he has in the manner that he does it, and that's just how he's gonna look for things to rage at. He's gonna come down on people, and he's gonna be, I'm the boss, and that's just how he's gonna run it because of his personality.
Lisa, that's, I think, the way he was trained, because when he was kind of preaching to Roberts at time, he said, when I started as a steward, and it was, boy, get me this and boy, get me that. So his training on being a leader was iron fist all the way. Do what I say and do it now. So that's the way he was trained, and that's the way he was going to be the leader of the ship. So it's all in the training.
I kind of wondered whether he really deep down believed that he didn't have control of the ship. That his being a martinet like that was a cover for his realization that his control was an illusion. That actually he wasn't respected. That it was other people on Mr. Roberts, the doctor, that the other officers on the crew were more respected than he was, and actually had more control of what was happening on the ship than he did.
I like that word, Chris, illusion. I think that, he did create his own realities.
And then still talking about the captain a little bit more, why do you think Pulver is afraid of him? Why does he avoid him?
In a word, work. If the captain knew of him and where he was, he would have work to do. He was hiding in the laundry or his stateroom, or not stateroom, or whatever they call
Whatever
them,
they call it.
to stay away from the captain. What do you say? He was there 14 months and the captain didn't even know him? That's not that big a ship.
That also kind of indicated to me that he didn't really have control of the ship. If he didn't know one of the few officers on the ship after 14 months,
right?
What kind of a commander is he, first of all, and how does an officer elude recognition for that amount of time?
Right.
And then Mr. Roberts said that Pulver is disorganized, lazy, lacks motivation and convictions. Do you agree with that?
I disagree with the fact that he was disorganized. He had it planned down pretty good. I mean, he was there 14 months and the captain didn't even know where he was or who he was. So there were some organizational skills there. He was a malingerer, a goof off. So, and I don't know what rank that is in the Navy either, but he was good at it, to stay gone that long or hidden that long. So yes, I agree with Mr. Roberts that he was lacking motivation.
Well, he had one kind of motivation.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I wonder if some of his lack of motivation was he didn't feel important to the war effort.
I don't know.
I think. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I think getting into the action was pretty far down on Pulver's list of things to do. He was looking for a good time in uniform.
Did he enlist or was he drafted? Do we know?
I don't think it was brought up.
No.
He went to
Okay.
college because he
Oh, that's right.
did that frat boy thing, and he's an ensign, so he's an officer.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I think he just has that party mentality.
Okay.
Girls, if he did go to college and was just in, he could have been like 22, 23.
He was young. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He just kind of had a sense that he felt he was in over his head. And there was a great deal of insecurity there, except in that one area of his life.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I remember somewhere in the back of my head, someplace, I was sorting the files the other day, and I remember there was either a TV program or another movie called Ensign Pulver. And I didn't have time to look it up before this call, but I believe there was another, like a follow-up or another storyline, but it was called Ensign Pulver. We all have computers in our hands, I know. And I don't know if it was a TV show, and I don't know if Jack Lemmon starred in it, but I think this story continued.
It
We'll
looks
know
like
in a
it came
moment.
out in 1964 and had Walter Matthau in it,
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
and Jack Nicholson and Larry Hagman.
Oh,
And Burl
wow.
Ives.
Oh.
Quite a variety there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Burl Ives had to be the mean old captain, I'm sure.
Okay. And then do you think Pulver finally became the officer Mr. Roberts wanted him to be?
I think at the end of the movie, it speaks to the fact he stood up for himself. Whether he was the officer that Robert wanted him to be, I don't know. But at least he seemed to get an ego and some backbone.
I think it was I don't know. I think that's going a little far, living up to the officer. Because even they were trying to get him to help them out with issues, and he was just kind of blowing them off. But then when he read the letter about the death, I think it was more of a reaction. I don't know how long he could sustain that or carry it through.
Okay, yeah, those are all good points. Do you think it's difficult for an actor to portray a soldier, sailor, or Marine? I think Henry Fonda was in the Navy. So that probably helps if you have some experience.
I think it would be hard without experience. Or maybe if you're a really good actor, you could pull it off.
I think it kind of depends on what the pre-filming training is. I mean, we know in films like Private Ryan and so on, if you read about how they were literally sent through a boot camp in order to acclimate themselves to this military environment. And you hear from the actors themselves about how significant that was. I think it was in Fury, they talked about how they had gone through this experience together, and it made them feel like a crew, like a team, like you would expect a tank crew to be. And I don't know if they went through that in Mr. Roberts. I didn't get a sense that they were trying to have actors actually create sailors. I mean, again, it was sort of like, I had a sense that these were sailors in the Broadway sense of being sailors, like they were on the stage and performing, rather than what we expect in movies where we want them to be more realistic.
I directed a production of A Few Good Men for our community theater a few years ago, and some of the cast was really struggling, and I had a couple of Marines come in for one rehearsal and spend some time with them, and it really did help. So maybe if they had that kind of influence somewhere in the lead up time, it helped.
Okay, it's not exactly on point, but years ago, I ran the training program for the Wisconsin Department of Justice for state's prosecutors. And one of the things I did in one of the training sessions, because we had a lot of new prosecutors that were coming in who had no military experience, in particular many women who had no experience with firearms, they had to deal with police officers who used firearms. And what I wanted to do was give them a sense of what it was like for the officer to have that revolver, that weapon in his or her hand, and the kind of, perhaps the adrenaline that might be flowing through them, just a sense of that. And the feedback I got on that was that they found it very useful in terms of being able then to relate to the officers that they were going to be interviewing and putting on the stand at trials.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do any of you think the director, John Ford, made the right decision not to rely on casting the movie with the stage version?
Who was in the stage version?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't know either. I just wondered.
Let's see.
Did he say why he didn't cast or try to cast the original, or did he not want to, or would they not do it, or we have any idea?
I have a guess. I mean, movie directors always like the big expanse, and they may think that stage actors would try and keep it confined and tucked in because they're used to working on a stage. John Ford is, I don't have any idea, but he did all those John Wayne movies where he panned across open expanses of land. He wanted to open everything up instead of confining it to the direction that would be given to stage. So maybe he thought he'd just start with a new cast to not be burdened with that transition.
That's an interesting.
Just a topic for discussion.
I think William Powell was the one who had both Broadway and film experience, with William Powell having been in that Thin Man series of movies before this was made.
Oh.
Yeah.
Also, there were two directors on this movie, because John Ford, as I understand it, came down with some, I think, serious gallbladder problem, had to go into surgery, and so they brought in another director to finish out the movie.
Interesting.
Let's see. Who was everyone's favorite favorite actor or character?
I don't know. I think I liked Doc. He was just a calming influence there, like we talked about, the father figure and unflappable and the mature one there. I don't know. I just liked him.
That's why she hangs around me.
Yeah. Unflappable, huh? Yeah.
Father figure. I like Pulver. I just like the fact that he was sneaking away and getting around things. I just for the comedic value of it, it was the one I liked.
I like Mr. Roberts, just because, just an interesting character, and I think Henry Fonda played him well. Kind of a dichotomy of wanting to serve but wanted to protect the crew, that kind of thing. I liked his mannerisms. I don't know if that was acting or how he is as a person, but I just liked how he spoke and walked and reacted with people.
I like Doc as well. Sometimes there's a smaller part in a movie that's just so full of characterization that you just kind of attach yourselves to them, and Doc was that character for me.
I usually like to go for an outside character, but I'm gonna go with Mr. Roberts because I like this sentimentality you could read off of him. I appreciated that. I did notice towards the beginning, he kept putting his hand on his stomach, and I thought that was going to be something related to the movie at first, but it must have just been a mannerism. But yeah, I liked Mr. Roberts.
I guess I get Lisa's role this month because I have an outside character. I mean, I liked all the characters, but the one that kind of caught my attention, and it wasn't a very big set of scenes, was Betsy Palmer's nurse. I really liked the way she took on Pulver, and it just her sarcasm with him, and the way she undoes his plan to come out to the ship, I just thought was a wonderful take on that whole well, the sexism in the service, basically. She upended it very nicely, and so I appreciated that. I thought it was a fun set.
Oh no, you're muted, Chris.
Sorry, my space bar must not have worked. I just thought that the way she handled Pulver in that upending the whole thing with the sexism, undoing the sexism of that relationship. I thought it was a nice. It just fit in the film really nicely, and I thought she did a nice job with that.
I'm
Good
just
one,
laughing.
Chris.
Pardon?
Good one. I like that.
I'm just laughing because all the nurses were about a size 2. I've never seen that tiny of a nurse in my life.
In regards to the filmmaking, do you think the set designer was successful at recreating the ship and the exterior scenes?
Well, I have oh, I'm sorry, Chris. One of my quirks, just like looking at a war movie and looking at rank first, there was a scene toward the end of the movie before Roberts left the ship, and he was on the deck, and something flashed by, and I thought, what was that? And a little while later, I saw it again. It was like sea spray, as if a ship was going through waves. The boat wasn't moving. I mean, it was perfectly still, and there was every once in a while some sea spray would.
Yeah.
Now that rings true of a stage play where you might have something like that happen. But I thought that was odd. It caught me off guard when I saw the first one. I thought, what was that? I was actually going to back the tape up. But anyway, so while the set designer probably did a good job of recreating the ship and the rooms that they stayed in and things like that, I'm not so sure the overall scenes were done that well.
I think that the ship and those things, like John said, were okay. It had that feel of when they're driving a car and you can tell that they're not really driving the car. So like the some of the surrounding stuff, you could just feel like it wasn't really connected. So
I've never been on a ship, but I was getting claustrophobic when they were in those tiny little rooms with the cots and the table, and it was giving me the willies.
One of you made a reference to it looked more theatrical than film, but this is going to sound weird, but I just thought that the metal on the ship didn't look metallic. It like had a matte look to it that I thought was a little disconcerting, but
it's always funny how there's like certain things that each of us will notice or, might turn us off to something, or it's different with everybody's individual senses of how they see it or take it in. It's interesting to talk. That's a good question because you kind of hear everyone's differences on that.
I think that filmmaking has changed so much, modern day films, that I think sometimes, this is an old film, and we need to put filmmaking techniques, I guess, in perspective as to what occurred then and what we're used to nowadays and the things that we see on films. But you know, to put it into perspective as to what was available to them and the technology and everything. So
this isn't anything related to this at all, but I just saw a very low budget film that kind of was a sleeper for a long time, and now it's going out. And I don't watch a lot of films, so but it was, the scenery was so pretty. The actors were actually, some of them weren't even professional actors, and it just was very believable. It was called Lad, L-A-D, A Yorkshire Story, and it's supposed to be based on a true story, but it was, I thought it was a very different kind of nice movie to watch. It's based in England, so I had to put on the subtitles because the English was so English that I couldn't really understand it sometimes.
I'm glad to hear someone else uses captions. I have to do it for the Great British
Yeah, we
Baking
do.
Show.
yeah, we do too.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's worth it though.
They're trying to watch Inspector Morris without it.
Yes,
You can't, you're right.
yes.
Yeah, can't be
We're
not
done.
struggling. Took me a long time to figure out what caster sugar was.
The English.
Oh, some of the
translation.
terminologies.
Yeah.
And we started watching one from Scotland. Well, we're learning a whole
gosh.
new term.
Oh,
Whole new
golly.
language.
Oh, funny. I think the last question we'll do for the night is how difficult do you think it is for the Hollywood director to enlist the help of the U.S. military, so the Navy, for this movie, for making the picture? How difficult would that have been?
Oh, how difficult? Oh, okay. I thought you asked, was it typical? I'd say, yeah, it's typical. I don't know if it's difficult or not.
I think a lot of it would have to do with the timing. I bet in, the years after 9/11, it would have been hard to do. But certainly in peaceful times, I think they see it as good publicity, to be
I
a
would
part
agree.
of that and be seen. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's 10 years after the war and this movie was made. So,
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
it's, you're not going to enlist or been able to get a lot of help from the military if it was 1944 and you wanted to make it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, true.
My understanding is that in the Pentagon, and maybe in each armed service branch, they have a group that specifically reviews scripts to determine whether they're going to assist. And that was one of the problems that they ran into, that the filmmakers ran into, say, with Apocalypse Now. There was no way they were going to get support from the U.S. military for that movie. Mr. Roberts is an excellent example of why they would. I mean, it's in a sense great PR for them. I mean, they don't come across as villains. They don't come across as evil. They, okay, they've got a bad captain there, but everybody knows they're bad officers in control of
Bad
things
bosses.
sometimes. But he's not evil in any sense. He's just a martinet. So on balance, it really depends. I don't think that if they've got a script that the military likes, they don't have any trouble doing it. And I believe they also have to reimburse the military for whatever it is they do. So that's probably a big limitation on how much support they can actually get. I mean, how much are you going to pay to have a battleship out there with a full crew? Probably not much.
I agree with Suzanne and Chris. Unless it's really derogatory in some way, I think that it's good. It's advertising, recruiting. It helps.
Yeah, and I actually read somewhere that at first the Navy was not happy because of Captain Morton's character.
Right.
And like you said with Chris and Suzanne, the publicity of it. they didn't want to see that kind of officer. They didn't want the public to see that. But the director was a Navy captain at one point, and he called some of his friends in the Navy. So that secured the cooperation then.
I'm sure there are plenty of ways, back channels and so on, that some of these folks have, that they, if they get the initial turn down, they can pull some strings, go to a member of Congress, that kind of thing.
Always nice to know someone, I guess. Does anyone else have any final thoughts about the movie?
Wasn't one of my favorites.
Why was that?
It just didn't capture me like I was hoping for. And it's been so publicized over the years growing up, Great War. I just let me down kind of.
I want to say that I belong to a couple discussion groups, books and different things. This is my most favorite discussion group because
Really?
the participants really offer their true, honest opinions and have
Okay.
a very, they bounce off each other and everything. So all of you, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh. And
Thank
you
you.
sure capture detail.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me about this movie, which really didn't have anything to do with the theme or anything of that sort, was it kind of made me think of that this was watching war from a perspective that you don't usually get from the people who are sort of on the backside of it, or on the not very prominent. And it made me think of Tom Stoppard's play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which looks at, I think it's Macbeth from the perspective of background characters. The Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are background characters in that. So he basically flips the story, the Shakespeare version. And I think this movie kind of does the same thing about the war. It kind of flips the perspective. It flips the focus on the support staff as opposed to the people that are out there in the trenches.
Valid
That's-
point.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
Chrissy. There was not one shot fired in this entire movie.
Right.
Right. And it's a war movie.
Yeah, nobody
Yeah.
even loaded a gun.
Right.
Very interesting point.
Don't even see a gun.
How would they
Anyone
have defended themselves?
Oh, there were gun emplacements on the ship when they
Oh,
went
there
to
were,
general
okay.
quarters. I think they were heading
Okay.
toward those.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think one of the officer of the deck, when the drunken sailors came back, I think he had a sidearm on, but that was about it.
Okay.
I'm sure there was an armory someplace where they had weapons.
Alrighty, well, it is almost 8 o'clock. So thank you all for coming to the movie discussion tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, no problem. We do have a couple book talks coming up, and as you know, trivia night's always happening. And then our next movie night is November 19th, and we're going to be discussing All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh,
I have to watch that one yet.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that, and thank you all for coming, and I hope you all have a great weekend.